Welcome to the Homeschool Show from North Carolinians for Home Education. Our goal is to help you homeschool with confidence and joy. I'm your host, Matthew McDill, and we have in the studio again, John Lewis.
Hello, Matthew.
What's up, John?
Hey.
It's great to see you.
You ready for the dad joke for today?
Dad joke of the day. I'm ready.
All right. So where do you find a cow with no legs?
Tell me.
Wherever you left it.
Okay, let's go.
I got a pretty good laugh out of him. That's good. All right. So today's show is sponsored by the college at Southeastern, where students are equipped to give their lives for the cause of Christ in the church, among the nation, and in every aspect of society. So today we're going to have homeschool conversations. We'll be talking with Mark Walker, who's running for the U.S. Senate seat from North Carolina, and we'll find out his views on home education. We also will have homeschool news, and we'll be talking about homeschooling in Virginia and Nigeria. So looking forward to hearing about that. And then the homeschool reality moment, Anderson Elam tells us why the Thrive Homeschool Conference is so important to her. So, Matthew.
All right. Thank you so much. Mark Walker was raised in the home of a Baptist pastor in the Panhandle of Florida. After moving to North Carolina in 1991, Congressman Walker worked in finance before being called to full-time ministry, serving 16 years as a pastor. In 2014, Walker launched an improbable but successful campaign for Congress. Walker was elected chairman of the Republican Study Committee, the largest caucus in Congress, a position formerly held by Vice President Pence. Walker served on various committees, including being named the ranking member on an Intelligence and Counterterrorism subcommittee. In 2018, Congressman Walker was elected vice chair of the full Republican House Conference. He is currently working on his pursuit of the U.S. Senate to replace the retiring Senator Richard Burr. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you, Matthew, and I got to hear John's joke. I don't know if that was a sympathy laugh from you, if that was actually hard.
Well, I genuinely didn't know the answer, so I that was pretty.
Nice.
Well, and of course, the reason we have you here is because you're running for the U.S. Senate seat, and we appreciate your service in the past and your desire to continue to serve.
Absolutely.
And we just love to know your heart for why you're doing this and for homeschooling, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mark, why don't you start off by telling us what prompted you to run for U.S. Senate?
Yeah, I was started in business and finance and did something I swore I would never do, and that would be to follow my dad's footsteps. So I did went back to school, became a pastor for 16 years here in the Triad, Winston-Salem and Greensboro primarily. And about 8 years ago or so, I just began to grow more and more concerned about the direction of our country. And I literally was watching an election. I got up out of the living room, walked down the hallway to where my wife was working back in the bedroom. And I kind of pulled my shoulders back and I said, babe, I'm running for the United States Congress. Now, I don't know your wives, but I've got one that asks some smart questions sometimes that I don't always have the best answer to. When she said, do you know anybody in Raleigh or even Washington, D.C.? And I said, no, I probably should. But we took a step of faith. God began to open up the doors, and we were able to get past a primary runoff, and then a general election, and have a chance to serve there in the U.S. House.
That's awesome. And just to clarify, so that he doesn't get in trouble, when he said smart questions, he meant intelligent.
Yeah, good question.
Very thought out questions.
That's
yes.
right. Yeah.
So what about seeking this seat in the Senate, though? Is that just kind of the same track, or was there a different thought there?
Well, as the congressional districts, another member, Mr. Bud and I, we had constituents when the districts were redrawn. I had 55% of the constituent base, and he had 34%. But I went to Mr. Bud and told him I didn't think it was right that he and I should run against each other. So I told him I would step away from the U.S. House. I'd already been talking for President Trump and others about running to replace Richard Burr. In fact, President Trump and I met in the Oval Office, even to potentially primary Senator Tom Tillis, but we waited. Mr. Budd, we talked there in his office there in the Cannon Building in December of 2019, and I said I would step away and run for the U.S. Senate. If he could stay in the U.S. House, that way we wouldn't have to oppose each other. So that's what I did in January of last year. My term in Congress and the House side ended, and we launched a U.S. Senate campaign at that point.
Okay.
So running against Ted, though, avoiding that didn't work out, huh?
No, I had hoped that it would. We announced about 3 or 4 months before Mr. Budd announced. Mr. Budd's a decent person. Without getting into the political, if you just look at our record, I led the House in repealing Obamacare and defunding Planned Parenthood. I'm the last member to get a balanced budget, highest conservative ever to serve, listed in the top 4 in leadership. And we've had an opportunity. And also, we are ranked as the #1 America First pro-Trump policy candidate as well. So we've got a good record of being able to navigate, and we feel like that we can build on that record. We've chosen not to take the DC super PAC special interest dark money. So we're just trying to run this campaign really basically on the backs of evangelicals and grassroots across the state. And it's going to be an interesting race. There are 14 people who have filed, and I think there are 3 of us that have been offered debates that are coming up over the next 3 weeks, statewide debates. They're in Raleigh, then also for Capitol News tonight, and then one that's statewide on all the different networks. So hopefully all the candidates, I know Mr. Former ex-governor Pat McCrory and I have confirmed for the debates. We hope that Mr. Budd will also show up and debate. I think it's important. So yes, to be able to hear the different issues.
Sure. Well, as you know, our audience is particularly concerned and interested in home education. And
Yes.
so we'd love to hear your views on home education as a option for education.
No, I look, I was just earlier, like an hour ago, I was talking to Ryan. Ryan plays catcher on the Forsyth Home Educators baseball team. I think they've got a game in Charlotte this evening. I was blessed. I never had to spend a single day, in fact, I never spent a single day in a public school setting. My parents sacrificed greatly. Mom certainly led us at home, but also probably spent most of my time in a Christian school, but understand the value primarily that there's not a one size fits all. And if we look specifically at the indoctrination, and you see it even in the members of Congress, I'll give you an example. There's a gap between age 50 and 55 in House Democrats. Older ones, 50, 55 and older, that grew up in America, they know how the game is played. They know the vernacular. Now you start talking about less than 50, with a generation of indoctrination in the public education system. This progressivism, this woke ideology has really become more than just a political perspective. It's now their religion. And you see that when they create the fervor or almost the hatred toward those of us who hold to Judeo-Christian principles and values. The great thing about home educating is that no one knows their child better than the parents.
Mm-hmm.
I have the same general consultants as Glenn Youngkin did. You remember Terry McAuliffe when this radical leftists said out loud what a lot of them think, that parents should have no say-so in their education.
Mm-hmm.
That's the battle that we're fighting, and that's why home educators do such a good job in investing in their children when it comes to education.
Right.
Yeah. Now, Mark, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the North Carolina home education laws, but we're curious what you think about those, if you're aware of anything that you think ought to be changed within North Carolina with regards to the law on homeschooling.
Specifically, I do believe, homeschool families pay taxes, probably a lot more if you look at the ratio of many others. There should be tax breaks for homeschool families, and any regulatory roadblocks that might keep families from homeschooling should be removed. There is an intentionality agenda against the homeschool movement that we see from the public educators arena to be able to stymie or not have the same level playing field. Now, I will tell you this, that 90% of all funding and educational processes are from the state. About 10% is from the federal level. But here's the problem in the public arena is that even with its 10%, those funds are always tied to, most of the time, to some progressive ideology that's required or mandated to be implemented. I was able to get a bill to the floor, and some of your viewers, listeners, I hope will take a look at this, because this bill ultimately needs to be passed, because here's what it says. It's A+ Act. I got 191 Republican votes. Unfortunately, 47 or 46 Republicans voted against it and did not pass. But it basically says this, is it doesn't take away any of the funding, but no decisions in the education arena will be made at the federal level. Because here's why. The more you can localize government, the more effective it can be. So first of all, the first step, getting the federal government out of the classroom and then working it down to the state and local school board levels. And that's why when it comes to these laws, for parents to be able to have the same tax breaks and some of those things where they're not encumbered or not on a level playing field when we see to the federal funding or the federal mandate specifically in the education arena.
So I think you just answered my next question, which was, since the homeschool laws, the education laws are localized in North Carolina, what would you see the role of the federal government in there? You just answered that, right? Or do you want to expand on that?
I'll expand a little bit more. The federal government has no role, either in the classroom, whether that's in the home educators, whether it's in the public sector, whether it's in the private school. The whole movement, this Build Back Better agenda, is to ascertain more power, more control. It's always about control with the left. I know I sound probably pretty partisan today, but after witnessing it 6 years in the very chambers and the halls of the U.S. Congress, it kind of reveals itself that this is a spiritual battle, even more than political, for the minds, the hearts, and the control to be able to go after our children. So the more that you can restrict federal, has to happen first on the federal level, then also on the state level, to be able to educate our children. And I've got one that's 15, my youngest, to be able to educate in the way that we see best, to make sure that indoctrination of secularism mindset or that the belief that government knows best, that's the battle that we're facing in the 21st century.
Wow. So do you homeschool? Do you guys homeschool your kids?
I do not homeschool. We have chosen private schools, and we even in our line of work, we have to be careful. We actually had the Secret Service. We had one person tracking our 12-year-old at the time.
Oh wow!
But yes, with me being in D.C. the last 6 years, my wife is a family nurse practitioner at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center there in Winston-Salem, and so we've not had the opportunity to do so, but we have utilized the private school system.
Awesome. So, a lot of the families that are listening to this, they're wanting to know, as a candidate, will you help protect the rights of the parents to freely teach their children at home?
100%. We have been big on parents' rights, education across the board. No one knows their children better than parents, and they should have the say-so to be able to implement the values, specifically in our case, the Judeo-Christian principles and values that we believe that made this country great to begin with. Now, is it a challenge? Yes. We're at a crossroads in this country. Our founding fathers were genius in the sense that they knew there in 1787, when they gathered there on the second floor in Philadelphia in drafting the Constitution, that if they could keep the checks and balances among the people, that government would be reduced, and that families and parents and individuals would be able to lead their lives, to educate themselves in the way that they saw fit. Right now, it's not to be gloom and doom, but there's a tilt toward the federalization of the classroom to the place that Washington wants to control, to be able to push the trends, or the transgender movement, the stronger LGBTQIA, the militant side of that, which is to basically indoctrinate our children at a very early age. And if you don't have the rights as parents to be able to make those educational choices, as I said earlier, I think you're going to see more and more people coming out of the public education arena who despise what it is that you and I stand and believe.
Well, with about 1 minute left, can you tell us any other aspects of your campaign, or what you would like to accomplish as senator if you gain that seat?
I think there's 2 or 3 things here. I'll probably have time just to hit 2 of those. China's involvement, they cyber attack us 15 to 20,000 times per day. They want to go after our infrastructure, and with their military buildup in the South China Sea, that's why I was the last member to get a balanced budget amendment to the floor. The amount of debt that we're accumulating with China is excruciating. Speaking of children, the second issue is the border security. In my position, I had the opportunity to see the different intelligence, how the drug cartels, Mexican cartels, control the entire southern border. And for this administration, specifically Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, to see the same intel that I have seen of what happens to children and to families who are trying to cross the border, without getting into graphic, but the human trafficking, the amount of drugs that are coming in, that is something that we must ascertain. America is the greatest country that's ever existed. For us to keep that sovereignty, we have to make sure that our border is secure.
Well, we've been talking to Mark Walker, former congressman and candidate for U.S. Senate. You can learn more about his campaign at walker4nc.com. That's Walker, the number 4, nc.com. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Matthew, John, it's been a privilege. Maybe next time I'll bring my own dad joke and we'll see what happens there.
That sounds awesome. Awesome.
We
You're
can't
hired.
wait to hear it.
Oh, man, that was great. That was great. We want to thank Mark for coming on the program today. And before we go to the homeschool news, we'd like to tell you more about our sponsor, the College at Southeastern.
At the College at Southeastern, we equip students to give their lives for the cause of Christ in the church, among the nations, and in every aspect of society. That is why we offer a world-class conservative education at an affordable rate in a vibrant, discipling community. With 25 ministry and marketplace majors and 4 5-year bachelor's to master's programs, the College at Southeastern can be a trusted next step in your students' education. Schedule a tour of our beautiful Wake Forest campus today. Go to collegeatsoutheastern.com to learn more.
Awesome. Sounds like a great resource there. And today in our homeschool news, we're going to talk about homeschooling in Virginia. And we have a video story on VPM by Caris Manzanares. I think I said that somewhat close. And it tells us about the growth of homeschooling in Virginia. And so she reports a few things. The popularity of homeschooling increased rapidly in Virginia after COVID-19 forced classrooms to shut down in March of 2020. Data from the Department of Education shows that nearly 62,000 Virginia students are being homeschooled this year. That's a 40% increase, Matthew, since 2019 when COVID hit. Homeschooling experts say they have seen growth in metropolitan areas like Richmond, Northern Virginia, and the Tidewater region, but also in rural parts of the state.
So they don't. It doesn't look like they have as many students as we do.
No,
in
but
North Carolina, but they're
40%
just like
increase is huge.
just like we reported in Georgia and other places. There's a pretty standard percentage of 40 to 50% growth, in the nation, in the different states, right?
And I'm assuming that's based on homeschools registered, right? Not because we talked about that before. There's some folks that when the kids were out of the classroom and they were doing it online through the public school, a lot of parents would say, "Well, we're homeschooling now during the pandemic," but this is actually numbers based on registrations.
Yeah, I would assume. Not sure where they got that, but that's probably what they would report on. And now, we've been trying to add some news from homeschooling across the nation, but now we're going to go across the world.
Yeah.
Okay? We're going to go to Nigeria.
I'm ready for this.
The World and Everything in It podcast ran a story by Onize Ohikere called Education Innovation. A growing number of parents in Nigeria are embracing homeschooling. Are you familiar with the World and Everything in It podcast?
No, I don't
Really?
know that one.
It's like World Magazine, World News Group.
Oh, okay, yeah, World Magazine.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that.
That's probably my number one podcast, by the way. I would say it's worth listening to.
Absolutely.
So, Ohikere writes, Adeniyi's homeschooling journey in Nigeria's Lagos state started 5 years ago when her eldest son started having trouble in school. And the mother shared, each time he would just struggle. I really didn't understand why it was like that until he came back home one day and told his father his teacher didn't think he was smart. The family decided to pull the 5-year-old out of school to help him catch up before the next school year began. That's when Adeniyi decided to explore homeschooling. So she pored over blog posts, YouTube videos, and live streams of homeschooling activities. I guess that's what most moms do when they start trying to figure that out.
That's how we start.
Adeniyi found the formal home education curriculum expensive, so she created her own.
There you go.
And her son flourished. Adeniyi is part of a growing group of homeschooling parents across Nigeria. They include parents searching for higher quality or tailored education and missionaries who are often on the move. So we see that it's growing in Nigeria. I'm sure a story can be told in other countries around the world, but that was one you might want to check out.
That sounds great. And that's reminiscent of other stories we've heard, like Einstein and other famous people from history who were viewed as not being intelligent enough in school, but were actually genius. So the influence of parents is huge, and that investment is incredible.
Well, and I think that's a great point, because one of the reasons that we love home education so much is because we have the individualized education, the ability to customize your education to your children's needs and to where they are. What that means is you are able to, if a child is struggling in an area, you're able to give them extra attention.
Yeah.
If they want to go fast in a certain area, they have the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
And so the pacing is one of those things that there's a lot of freedom in. Also, certain areas of interest. Maybe they have certain things they really want to study. Well, they have the freedom to do that and to give leeway in experiencing and doing hands-on things. So just like you pointed out, and I think that's the case here, to try to put all the kids in a certain kind of box that are all going to go through the same exact thing and think that that's going to work out too well doesn't seem like a very good approach.
And we've talked about several times before the one-size-fits-all approach to education.
Yeah.
And every person is different, right? And so children learn different things at different rates. And anyway, it's a huge plus for homeschooling. Right. We're going to move now to our homeschool reality moment. Anderson Elam tells us why the Thrive Homeschool Conference is so important to her. So let's take a look at that now.
Yeah.
We at that point had just had our fourth child, and my husband had always been interested in homeschooling and thought that we should be homeschooling. And he decided that we should start by going to the Thrive Conference, which happens in Winston-Salem, which is where we live. And so we registered for the homeschooling conference. We took all 4 of our children, and at the end of it, I was all in. And we've attended every year since, and I have to say it's my end of the year kind of therapy session, I call it, because it answers the question of why. Why am I doing this? And the why has been different for each one of my children. But now, after more than 10 years of homeschooling, we still homeschool. I still go to the conference, and we all look forward to it. Even my child, who's 21 and getting married, already has the dates on his calendar because he loves to come back into town and participate with us. I think the book fair is excellent because my children get to interact with different people. Sometimes there are vendors who have written their own stories. And so we'll buy a new book that we would never find at Barnes & Noble. I love it because I get to ask specific questions of a curriculum company, get some information from them based on my students' learning style. Then we've also got the conference speakers. I have loved keynote speakers. I still have notes. I still remember specific things that I've been taught, things that have been, brought to mind from their speeches, and that's really encouraging. Sometimes it's really challenging, but then you also have some of the talks are equipping me as a mom to run my household. And how do I do that? How can I structure my family so that we can keep the house clean, we can keep everybody fed, and we can school at the same time? And so some of it's very practical, and some of it's just a real encouragement with a community that's like-minded. And you could just ask questions of other people that you bump into, and sometimes you end up having the most profitable conversation with another attendee. And so I love it all.
All right, thanks, Anderson, for sharing that. I've not heard anybody call the Thrive Conference the therapy session.
No, I haven't heard that before.
It's
either.
pretty great, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I know that my wife and our neighbor, they homeschool as well. They used to talk about how they needed that for refreshment every
absolutely.
year. It was encouraging, and so we hope that you guys will take advantage of it. The Thrive Conference really is great, and I've said it before. We actually during the pandemic attended another conference in another state, and it's I won't name any names, but it's like one of those things that's done on a large scale. NCHE does a much better conference.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Good report.
Yeah.
Another thing to point out that we do have at the conference is the college fair.
Yeah.
I saw you at the college fair last year because yours is looking now.
Yeah.
And I know that our sponsor, the college at Southeastern, will be there, and many other colleges. So if you have, if you're looking for colleges, the college fair might be a great place for you to check out during the Thrive Conference.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you for joining us this week. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so you can send your questions to us and any feedback to the Homeschool Show at nche.com. Please help other people find the podcast by subscribing, rating, leaving reviews, all that sort of thing. And if you want more information, you can contact us, nche.com/The Homeschool Show.
Until next week, we look forward to seeing you again. Continue to homeschool with confidence and joy.